Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host and most willing on this show. We simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun. Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host and most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on, it's gonna be fun.
All right, guys. So today's date, July 21st, 2021. 7/2021 if you're playing lottery numbers, and this is How the Frack We Got Here, the midweek edition. I'm your host and most Will Buchanan. How the Frack We Got Here, we do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before I do get started, we do try to be a family-friendly podcast, despite how YouTube feels about us, but that's okay. We knew social media censoring was coming eventually, but anyway, we try to keep our language clean, but sometimes choice words will fly, and sometimes we may show things that might be of a graphic nature, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. We did start a little bit late, guys. Reason being was basically because of the Biden town hall they had with CNN. To really sum it up, as far as the Biden town hall, guys, really not a lot was said, and I was kind of disappointed in this. He didn't really talk. He didn't talk really about DACA and the fact of the latest issue with that. He really didn't go into that. He didn't really go into the filibuster, his infrastructure plan, and his stance on hiring more police just seemed to be a little bit lacking. Especially the simple fact of the matter is that one restaurant owner said that he can't find people to hire. And my big thing, I don't know about y'all, but I cannot, above all else, stand when I hear a business owner sit there and say they can't find people. There are plenty of people out there that want to work, but they don't want to work for crappy wages. And I wish that Biden actually said that. I wish Biden sat there and said, you know what, there are plenty of people out there looking for work. They just don't want to be paid crappy. They don't want to have to kill themselves 40 plus hours a week for $7, $8, $9, $10 an hour. It's not cutting anymore. Not when everything is going up by an alarming rate except your paycheck. And if that doesn't say about the state of capitalism in our country, nothing does. But I just cannot stand when I hear a business owner sit there and say, well, I can't find nobody to hire. No, you don't want to pay more, because that's exactly what'll solve this entire problem outside of raising the minimum wage is basically doing what should have been done, which is raising the minimum wage. That is the only way that actually gets solved. But I digress. It just that this Biden town hall just was a little bit lacking in things. I mean, it kind of felt like a very centrist. When I mean by centrist, I mean middle of the road. They don't, centrists usually stay middle of the road. They don't pick a side per se. They go straight. They just stay in the middle where they consider it's a safe place. And the thing about it is with Biden, I just never got that you could do more situation, if that makes sense. But what do you expect from a town hall? Anybody that's ever been to a town hall realizes if you've been to a town hall, your job is not a town hall. It is a glorified manager position. Hate to say it. That being said, I do want to move on to Ted Cruz because Ted Cruz is doing what he does best. Absolutely nothing except block people.
Washington agrees on something. Look at that. The main reason that major State Department jobs are unfilled. Ted Cruz, the Biden administration waiting now on about 60 nominees to be confirmed, and it's facing more resistance in securing those confirmations than any other agency. For his part, Cruz is proudly claiming responsibility as he tries to pressure the administration on a specific point of Russia policy. Kylie Atwood has more on this story. Okay, what is the issue here that he's having?
Okay, so he is pressuring the Biden administration, as you said, over a very specific piece of Russia policy, Nord Stream 2. He wants the Biden administration to implement more sanctions on this Russian geopolitical project, which he and many others say is going to harm countries in the region like Ukraine. But the Biden administration has already made their policy decision on this front. So essentially, he is fighting over something that is no end in sight, right? This is a fruitless endeavor, a lot of folks on the Hill said to me. And we should both note both Republicans and Democrats are frustrated by this. And what this is doing is just demonstrating how hyper partisan the nomination process has become. Traditionally, it was sort of a pro forma. Folks got their vote, they had their hearing, and, that was done. We move on and we debate other things. But what this is doing is really creating a very tense dynamic on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And I want to show you what has erupted in some of these business meetings between Senator Cruz and the leading Democrat on the committee.
Maybe it's your presidential aspirations. I don't know, but you're turning to political purposes. And you held over every nominee. Every nominee. I've never seen that.
Well, and I did so for a policy that, Mr. Chairman, you've supported
with
Nord Stream 2 that the Biden administration has deliberately undercut and given a gift to Putin and Russia. And at least in the prior administration, you agreed with that. You leveled a charge against
I
me right now.
I never in the
Apparently
prior
you don't want a
administration
response to
held
that
up
charge.
all of the nominees on an agenda because I had a policy difference. You're the first member that I know of to do that.
So now the question is, how do you actually get these nominees through, right?
Okay, so again, the one thing I will say above all else, apparently, if you're Russia, Ted Cruz cares more about sanctioning you than doing his job as a politician. Which, the reason behind that story is that basically the Biden administration had made their appointments to who they want to appoint as federal judges to lower courts. Of course, that requires a majority vote, and Ted Cruz knows this, and because of that, he objected. And again, I am not surprised because Ted Cruz has done nothing more than get paid for doing nothing. I mean, if anything, he gets paid for public speaking, and I just find that completely fascinating that a guy who literally does nothing gets paid $100,000 a year and has yet to submit anything productive for the American people. But wants to talk about some company that's being sanctioned in Russia is not being sanctioned enough. And because of this, he's not moving forward on these appointments. Ladies and gentlemen, what you are basically seeing is the Republican roadblock as we know it, because 2022 is coming around the corner, which is our midterm elections. We are not surprised that Republicans are not doing anything except being roadblocks, holding their feet, and at the same time just holding the ball. Again, I've been saying this. Democrats should have went ahead and went for the filibuster, which is also something Biden did not mention in his town hall that should have been done. Eliminate the filibuster, because we're seeing right now a party that has very little sway, and I mean very little. I mean, Democrats have the majority in the House, have the majority in the Senate, and they have the presidency. That's total control of Congress. The only downside is in the Senate, it's 50-50, which you think would be easy, Kamala Harris being the swing vote. Because we already know at this point that every Republican is going to vote for anything against the Republicans put out. I'm sorry, that's wrong. The Republicans are going to vote against anything that the Democrats put out. So again, you would think this would be easy. Even though in the Senate it requires a 62 majority vote, why filibuster? So, Democrats, again, how long are you guys going to sit here and have this debate about being united front, and at the same time the filibuster is still there, which prevents you from actually getting a lot of your bills through before the clock runs out. And trust me, the clock is definitely ticking down. But with Ted Cruz, he's just like Marjorie Taylor Greene. He just hasn't said anything that stupid yet. But trust me, it's probably coming. But another thing I wanted to point out was, again, with the Capitol 6, I'm just terrible with words today. With the January 6th riot, they keep on calling it's a riot. It really was. It was a failed coup d'etat. But again, as more people are being arrested, more people are being brought to charge. This is the reason why I call them terrorists, especially with this guy and his training.
We're seeing with one of the alleged insurrectionists. This is Robert Morse. He is an ex-Army Ranger who he's now going to be detained pre-trial. He's not going to get out because the judge said that it's too dangerous. And the judge criticized him for using his Army training, and not just any Army training. This is a special operations unit of the Army, slammed him for using that against his own country. Let's play some video of Morse from January 6th. And I do want to warn viewers that this is video that contains disturbing images and language.
Take a look around! Take a look around! Back up! We're gonna take our captain back!
That's pretty low. That is pretty low.
What do you think your dad said? The dad I had to hit a girl with a feeling stick today. He'd say, way to go, son.
The message that the judge is sending is clear, right? You don't take your training by the U.S. government and use it against the U.S. government.
That's absolutely right. And it's important to note here, not only is he a Ranger, meaning he's been to Ranger school and is qualified, he actually served 3 tours in Afghanistan with the 2nd Ranger Battalion. And these are amongst the most elite, most highly trained of America's armed forces. And the point is, he is trained not only in tactics, but in being able to go into chaotic situations, to take control and to lead forward. And that's exactly what you saw him doing. It's the kind of thing you want to see on the battlefield. It's absolutely not the sort of thing you want to see being used against law enforcement who are protecting the peaceful transfer of.
They were just tourists, right? Tourists who were former Army Rangers who were using their training to infiltrate a federal building. But you're going to stay and tell me they were harmless. This is the reason why I keep pointing this out, folks, because this is the reason why that January 6th commission is so needed. Because if they start shining a light on these people who have been arrested for storming the Capitol and more things are starting to come to light, it goes to show you just how messed up that situation is, and those who are responsible for it should honestly face their crimes, which would be 85% of 85% of the Republican Party as we know it. Trust me, they're still latching on to Trump, so shouldn't be surprised with the simple fact of the matter that, of course, as of late, Pelosi is still trying to get that commission together. But technically, she still has to get Kevin McCarthy to come on board because she still wants 5 Democrats and 5 Republicans. I don't know about you, but I would not invite the killer to his own crime I would not invite the killer to the crime scene of his own crime. Just me. But like I said, I'll follow that story as it develops. But again, not surprised that some people, like I said, the craziness of these people that storm the Capitol. Should tell you all. It really should tell you all need to know. Even more so, even with Biden when he did his Ohio town hall today. There's also another story. The simple fact of the matter, he talked about the COVID-19 and the Delta variant and the fact of getting people vaccinated and how much of a hurdle that is. Keyword: hurdle.
You're unvaccinated. You are not protected. So please get vaccinated. Get vaccinated now.
An urgent plea from President Biden, imploring Americans to shed their doubts about vaccinations with COVID-19 cases sharply on the rise.
The only way we put it behind us is if more Americans get vaccinated.
Dina Cranley and Barbara Lynch agree with the president, but they have a blunt reality check for him.
I don't think they're listening to the politicians.
Lynch and Cranley have spent months trying to chip away at vaccine hesitancy through their group First Ladies for Health, which does outreach to communities of color and faith.
We've come up against a brick wall, and we're trying to figure out what we can do now to induce people to get the vaccine. I have a grandson who is not taking the vaccine. And we've preached to him and preached to him and preached to him about it, but he's not taking the vaccine.
Your own grandson?
My own grandson, yes. He believes the stuff that he's seeing on the internet.
The Delta variant is rattling nerves from the White House to Wall Street, with the Dow tumbling Monday more than 700 points, the worst one-day decline of the year.
We know that our economic recovery hinges on getting the pandemic under control.
Two Americas The vaccinated and the unvaccinated are coming into sharper focus here in Ohio and across the country. Ohio has fully vaccinated 45.9% of its population, just below the U.S. rate of 48.6%. Hamilton County, home to Cincinnati, is slightly higher at 49%.
Now we're in this stage where the supply is very high and the demand is very low.
The long lines at vaccination centers in the winter and spring have slowed to a summertime trickle. Julianne Nesbitt is health commissioner of Claremont County, just outside Cincinnati, where interest in vaccines has dramatically leveled off.
Welcome to the Vax-A-Million giveaway.
Despite lotteries, celebrity endorsements, and more.
I think most people who have strong beliefs one way or the other, I don't know that an incentive is going to push them one way or the other to be able to do it.
The Delta variant has highlighted a new divide in America, rooted in far more than politics. Bill Stearns, a lawyer in the conservative suburb of Batavia, got his shot early, but knows plenty of people who haven't.
The primary reason I'm hearing is that it's untested and they don't want to have anything like that in their bodies that they don't control.
In Cincinnati, 23-year-old Marquise Hughes told us he will not get the vaccination, despite pleas from his grandparents and others.
I just don't feel like it's safe. Can no one convince me?
Who told you it wasn't safe?
Myself. Just my research.
Oh boy. I'm sorry, y'all. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be honest. It is difficult to tell people about vaccinations, about getting vaccinated. It is. It is also cringeworthy because I don't ask people no more. I used to just because of my curiosity, but I don't anymore. Where I used to say all the time, "Why don't you get vaccinated?" And they're like, "Well, I don't trust it." Okay. So is it just your personal belief, or is it, oh, because of my research? Well, where's your research done? The internet. And I can only sit there and surmise this the best way I know how. And this is probably the best way I could say it. Some people are idiots. I'm sorry, there's just no way I can put this. Some people are just idiots, where literally and figuratively, and I'll say this again, and for all those that watch this podcast within the sound of my voice, please let me know. I have yet to see one person who has caught COVID-19, survived, and still had the same mindset when they came out. I can't see someone who said, I'm not getting the vaccine, get COVID-19, get hospitalized, survive, and then come back out and still say I'm not getting the vaccine. I've yet to see a story like that, personally. I have yet to see a story like that. I'm sure one out there exists, but I'm pretty sure it's far few and in between. Just because the simple fact of the matter is, the level of just, what are you thinking when it comes to misinformation? And then I realize, these very same people also watch Fox News.
Vaccines work. Why are vaccinated people still banned from living normal lives? Honestly, what's the answer to that? It doesn't make any sense at all. If the vaccine is effective, there is no reason for people who have received the vaccine to wear masks or avoid physical contact. So maybe it doesn't work and they're simply not telling you that.
Fox host Tucker Carlson is one of many in the right-wing media casting doubt on life-saving COVID vaccines, even as unvaccinated Americans continue to drive up COVID case numbers. Let's talk about this now with former Fox News chief political correspondent Carl Cameron. He is now the co-founder of Front Page Live. And I wonder, I think I know the answer, but I want to know from you, why are hosts like Tucker Carlson doing this?
It's about ratings.
Just money.
And ratings ultimately become revenue. And that's the name of the game. Whoever gets the most clicks on social media makes the most money, gets the most fame, gets the most attention. And that type of activity is not journalism. It's not news. It's gaslighting. It's propaganda. I mean, just last week, new infections went up 70%. And according to the CDC, the NIH, which oversees the CDC, it is absolutely 99.5% of those infections are people who haven't gotten vaccinated. I mean, come on. Anybody who disputes that sort of stuff is putting people's lives at risk and potentially killing them.
Yeah, pretty much. There's no, I don't have a better way. I
And
also don't have
alarming.
a better way of saying this, y'all. But that came from a former Fox chief editor, and he's right. Revenue equals let's be honest, sensationalism sells. I mean, ratings equal revenue, clicks equal revenue. That's literally social media profiteering in a simple sentence. And of course, you can't take Fox News seriously because Fox News is not a news station. They are sensational. They are the sensational ravings of a very old white man in today's modern society. They are. Fox News is exactly the same type of people that will sit there and shout from the heavens everything that's wrong with this country and how the 1950s was great for them in today's modern society. So Tucker Carlson, I don't take him seriously, but aside from him being just an overall douche, pardon my French, but aside from that, this is what he does. He sensationalizes, he overdramates, he spits out proverbial jargon as if it's supposed to make sense. Now keep in mind, you gotta remember, this came from the same Fox News network that had him, Hannity, and O'Reilly, which I'm surprised O'Reilly is somewhere. Trust me, just because we don't see him on the airwaves anymore doesn't mean he's still not speaking somewhere. And Hannity, I'm not even going to begin on him because Hannity actually did a full 180 that he turned around and said you should get vaccinated. This came from the godfather of the douche, which again tells you everything you want to know when it comes to misinformation, folks. Misinformation does a lot more damage than anything else because misinformation feeds people's fears. It feeds people's disbeliefs when we have plenty of evidence out there that suggests otherwise. But Fox News has made a cash cow of it. And again, this is one of those things where I sit there and say, guys, is amazing to me. Not even more so that lost my train of thought for a second. Sorry, guys. But the simple fact of the matter is, it's just getting a vaccine. Now, again, it is your choice. It is still your choice to get the vaccine. But trust me when I sit there and say this, with that Delta variant out there, it's becoming more of an issue to beat this thing. Because this pandemic was beatable 3-4 months ago, before the Delta variant. But at the same time, it's almost like, okay, we're going to open back up now because a lot of us are vaccinated. No. Those numbers can easily turn around and go right back up because there's still a great number of us that aren't vaccinated. And again, that's the problem. But this is the fight that we take on just because the fact of the matter is you have these individuals out here that will say differently. Even more so, look at Texas, for example. Texas has done two things today, which I'm surprised about. And I'm just going to go over one, where a House Republican in Texas decided to introduce a bill calling for the forensic audit of the 2020 election. And you're asking why? Because they want to make sure there's no voter fraud. And I've been trying to figure this out. That a Republican member of the Texas House in the state of Texas is the one that submitted this bill and said that he is seeking a forensic audit of the election in the state's largest counties. He said, quote unquote, we need a forensic audit to uncover all the voter fraud. Texans want to know more about the claims of voter fraud and deserve to have confidence in their elections. Voters want to know that their legal vote counts and matters. Did anybody sit there and let this person know that Trump won Texas? I mean, it wasn't even close. Trump won Texas by a landslide. And now a Texas Republican is sitting there saying, wait. We just want to be sure. I don't understand that. I'm like, here's my thing. What happens? What happens if they turn around and do an audit and they find out that Biden won? Does it prove that voter fraud exists? Or does it prove that the fix was in for Trump at Texas? Either way, it's a waste of time. It is a waste of time. And this just goes to show you, I may be missing a career in politics because apparently once you get elected, you can just put in whatever BS you want and that's your job limit. You can literally sit there and say, you know what? this is what I want. I'm gonna put this in, count it as my due diligence for this session, for this session in Congress. I don't understand it. Even more so, which is also crazy, the same thing in Texas, by the way. There is a Senate bill that passed, and I wish, guys, I could make this up. I wish I honestly could make this up. I'm going to read this because this is about the best way I could put this, y'all. That the Senate had turned around and passed a bill that removes the requirement to teach the Ku Klux Klan as morally wrong. I wish I could make this up. The thing about it is, it's like quote unquote, this was the day the Texas Senate had voted to pass a bill that would remove a requirement for public school teachers to teach that the Ku Klux Klan is morally wrong. That it passed in a Republican dominated. It passed the Senate, which is Republican dominated, 18-4. Think about this for a second, guys. Think about this for a second. The Ku Klux Klan, the KKK, literally white supremacy at its beginning, at its genesis form. And now public teachers are not required to teach this as morally wrong. Teach a group is morally wrong. A literal hate group. Is it me, or is it just Texas, Tennessee, Florida, and Alabama are just having this whole game of hold my beer? Because I swear, how I can only stress, how did this make it to the Senate? Because I'm thinking to myself, the only reason why this would be voted, why this would be approved, is because a lot of people don't believe that the Ku Klux Klan was morally wrong. I just, guys, I'm gonna be so dead honest. It is, I wish I could make this up. I mean, this is worse than Tennessee, where Governor Bill Lee decided that he's going to go ahead and ban the whole idea of critical race theory being taught in schools, and if a teacher taught it, it would remove the funding for that school for them to educate in the school that they're teaching in. Because a lot of people a lot of people hear critical race theory and think, we're going to indoctrinate our kids to hate ourselves. No. Critical race theory is pretty much the attempt of telling the real truth about America. For all those that don't remember, and I use this example all the time, you guys remember grades 1 through 6, maybe 7th and 8th, where you took U.S. history and world history, and they tried to paint the rosiest story of America that they could. Which was really BS. Our history in this country has never been clean. It has been dark, it has been bloody, it has been messy, it has been atrocious. There have been multiple things that have been done in the name of humanity, and it should be told. Why? Because that's what we learned. If you do not learn from the past, you are doomed to repeat it. Hence why racism is still around. Because some people believe that they're not being racist when they truly are. Hence the whole entire time, if we teach CRT in schools, we can avoid all this and avoid a literal body of governing in a state that says that the Ku Klux Klan, the KKK, cannot be taught as morally wrong. I still cannot believe I'm saying that. Moving right along, guys, I did want to cover again. Another thing about the pandemic has been masks and things of that nature. And I got to bring this up because Rand Paul, good old Kentucky, an optometrist, is still having his war of words with Anthony Fauci. And I always found this funny that, well, let me just play it first before I explain myself.
Criminal code creates a felony and a 5-year penalty for lying to Congress. On your last trip to our committee on May 11th, you stated that the NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And yet, gain-of-function research was done entirely in the Wuhan Institute by Dr. Shi and was funded by the NIH. I'd like to ask unanimous consent to insert into the record the Wuhan virology paper entitled Discovery of a Rich Gene Pool of Bat SARS-Related Coronaviruses, please deliver a copy of the journal article to Dr. Fauci. In this paper, Dr. Shi credits the NIH and lists the actual number of the grant that she was given by the NIH. In this paper, she took 2 bat coronavirus genes, spike genes, and combined them with a SARS-related backbone to create new viruses that are not found in nature. These lab-created viruses were then shown to replicate in humans. These experiments combine genetic information from different coronaviruses that infect animals but not humans to create novel artificial viruses able to infect human cells. Viruses that in nature only infect animals were manipulated in the Wuhan lab to gain the function of infecting humans. This research fits the definition of the research that the NIH said was subject to the pause in 2014 to 2017, a pause in funding on gain of function. But the NIH failed to recognize this, defines it away, and it never came under any scrutiny. Dr. Richard E. Bright, a molecular biologist from Rutgers, described this research in Wuhan as the Wuhan lab used NIH funding to construct novel chimeric SARS-related coronaviruses able to infect human cells and laboratory animals. This is high-risk research that creates new potential pandemic pathogens that exist only in the lab, not in nature. This research matches, these are Dr. E. Bright's words, this research matches, indeed epitomizes, the definition of gain-of-function research, done entirely in Wuhan, for which there was supposed to be a federal pause. Dr. Fauci, knowing that it is a crime to lie to Congress, do you wish to retract your statement of May 11th where you claimed that the NIH never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan?
Microphone.
Your microphone.
Senator Paul, I have never lied before the Congress, and I do not retract that statement. This paper that you are referring to was judged by qualified staff up and down the chain as not being gain of function. Let me finish.
You take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans,
right.
You're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct. And Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly. And I want to say that officially. You do not know what you are talking about. Okay, you get one person.
Let's read from the NIH definition of gain of function. This is your definition that you guys wrote. It says that scientific research that increases the transmissibility among animals is gain of function. They took animal viruses that only occur in animals and they increased their transmissibility to humans. How you can say that is not gain of function?
It is not.
It's a dance, and you're dancing around this because you're trying to obscure responsibility for 4 million people dying around the world from a pandemic.
And let's let Dr. Fauci.
I have to, well, now you're getting into something. If the point that you are making is that the grant that was funded as a sub-award from EcoHealth to Wuhan created SARS-CoV-2. That's where you are getting. Let me finish.
We don't know.
Well,
we don't
wait
know
a minute.
If it did come from the lab, but all the evidence is pointing that it came from the lab, and there will be responsibility for those who funded the lab, including yourself.
I totally
This committee will allow the witness to respond.
I totally resent the lie that you are now propagating, Senator, because if you look at the viruses that were used in the experiments, that were given in the annual reports, that were published in the literature, it is molecularly impossible.
No one's saying those viruses caused it.
No
one
is
alleging that
molecularly.
those viruses caused the pandemic. What we're alleging is that gain-of-function research was going on in that lab, and NIH funded it.
That is
you can't
not.
Get away from it. It meets your definition, and you are obfuscating the truth.
I'm not obfuscating the truth.
Senator
You are
Paul's
the one.
time is expired, but I will allow the witness to.
Let me just finish. I want everyone to understand that if you look at those viruses, and that's judged by qualified virologists and evolutionary biologists, those viruses are molecularly impossible
No one's
to
saying
result
they are. No
in
one's saying those viruses
SARS-CoV-2.
caused the pandemic.
Senator Paul,
We're saying they are gain-of-function viruses because they were
they're not.
animal viruses that became more transmissible in human, and you funded it.
And
you won't admit the truth.
And you implying.
Senator Paul, you're
You know what Congress needs? Congress needs a mic guy. As in, he goes over there, cuts off the mic, and allows the other person to talk. That's what needs to happen, ladies and gentlemen. But I wanted to show that because it's Rand Paul. Rand Paul, if he's your optometrist, I feel very sorry for you. Because he is an optometrist, but not a virologist. Dr. Anthony Fauci is the U.S.'s leading virologist director. He's the guy we turn to as far as what to deal with as far as this entire coronavirus pandemic is concerned. Rand Paul has been going at him every chance he got, specifically about the grant to this Wuhan province, in which he's insinuating that the grant that was granted to them by the U.S. would suggest that they were conducting tests for diseases that animals, for a disease transfer of animals to humans. Sounds completely stupid, right? Yeah. Rand Paul couldn't stop saying it. It was almost like we need to find out where this coronavirus came from, but it's coming from Wuhan. It's coming from China. Why does that sound familiar? Who was the president that was telling this entire time the virus was coming from China? Former disgraced President Dorito? The Republican Party is just going with the big lie. And Fauci is trying to do one thing, aside from keeping his cool. I'll give him that. Had that been me, this is why I'm not a politician. You come at me like that, we gotta talk outside. That's a we gotta go outside moment. Even more so, he wouldn't allow him to answer the questions. But then again, that's the normal. That is, I hate to say it's becoming the new normal, but it feels like that because it used to be you talked, you waited for a rebuttal. You talked, you waited for a rebuttal. You didn't cut said person off. You didn't talk over them because you're trying to berate it. It's like, it's one of those things, I forgot who said it, it's like when you have a lie and you keep saying it and you keep saying it louder and longer than the person's telling the truth, people are going to start to lean toward you. I forgot who said it, it's going to bug me for the rest of the night. But that's what Rand Paul tried to do. You can't ask somebody a question and then turn around and start talking over them. Like, that's not what I said. And you see Fauci's like, Fauci, cool as a cucumber. That's not what you're insinuating. You have no idea what you're talking about. Which is basically the politicians, the most nicest, polite way of saying, stay in your lane, dude. You're an optometrist. Not to bash any optometrist out there, but Rand Paul is an optometrist. He's not a virologist. That's like a plumber. That's like a plumber going to a brain surgeon and saying, here's the problem of why we have so many traumas because of what you guys are doing. A plumber's not going to do that. But then again, an optometrist shouldn't go to a virologist about a transfer of viruses with such an ignorant understanding to where it's almost like you look stupid. But again, that's what the stupid do. They talk louder and try to berate the person who actually knows what they're talking about, which again, Fauci was. So, good old Kentucky. Yay. But moving right along, I did want to cover this point about masks and airlines because I don't know if you guys have flown lately, but it's starting to get real about here about masks and flying. And that was a terrible segue.
Passengers behaving badly. FAA now sharing new numbers about the uptick in attacks on planes and on the ground. Our Victor Okendo has more.
This morning, turbulence in the friendly skies. This cell phone video capturing a heated argument between two men turning violent as passengers were deboarding a Frontier Airlines flight in Miami. The number of disruptive passengers across the country skyrocketing. The Federal Aviation Administration announcing nearly 100 more incidents with unruly passengers in just the last week. This year alone, airlines reporting more than 3,000 incidents of bad behavior on board flights, more than 2,000 of those incidents involving passengers refusing to comply with federal mask mandates. And before takeoff, TSA officers at security lines also seeing an alarming uptick in assaults. The number of attacks up by 40% since May. 85 attacks happening this year, including reports of passengers pushing and even biting officers.
With anything, when everybody is forced into one small area and short-staffed, it's going to cause chaos everywhere.
And the FAA continues to enforce its zero-tolerance policy on unruly passengers, proposing fines as high as $52,000 per incident. Guys?
Crazy, right? Just for flying, you have to wear a mask. That is still the thing. This honestly lets you know where we are in this pandemic right now. That yes, you can fly. There's still travel restrictions. Depending on some areas, you might be quarantined. It's still a thing. You still have to wear a mask, folks. And it's amazing where a lot of these things where people go in there not wearing masks, thinking, well, you can't tell me I can't wear a mask. Yeah, they can, because that's the FAA. They still following pandemics. They're still following the pandemic procedures. Pandemic. I keep on saying pandemic. The pandemic procedures, because it's for your safety and their safety. It amazes me though that again, folks always try to get around stuff. Even more so with the anti-vaxxers. Yes, they are good. And this is a story which I wish I could make up of how they're trying to get around on Facebook.
Groups are trying to stop Facebook from removing their posts by using code words and fake profile names related to dance. Like in these posts, dancing folks are vaccinated people. Vaccine is hokey pokey or beer. While Facebook says it's working hard to fight misinformation, removing 18 million COVID-19 falsehoods so far, this new tactic could make that tougher, which could impact people like sisters Nada and Hannah Al-Haj, who get their information from social media and other sources and don't agree on the vaccine.
I am a bit skeptical. I don't really trust the government too much.
When you hear your sister say these things, how do you feel?
It makes me sad. The vaccine is something I think everyone should get to help prevent other people from getting sick.
Some families have joined online support groups to help with conversations about misinformation, including this group with more than 150,000 members. Psychologist Sander Vanderlinden studies the effect of misinformation on social media.
How does social media influence people's relationship with facts?
When people receive most of their information about COVID-19 and vaccination from social media, they're more likely to be misinformed and they're less likely to get vaccinated.
A survey shows 53% of Americans get their news from social media. As for the Al-Haj sisters, they no longer talk about the vaccine.
We make our own choices.
Experts say when talking about a tough topic, find common ground. For example, affirm people have concerns about the vaccine's side effects. Then pivot toward evidence about its safety and effectiveness. Finally, allow that person to make their own choice.
They are right. I mean, that's the best way to spark up a conversation. But when you have facts to prove that, hey, you should get this vaccine before you wind up in the hospital with it, because if you wind up in the hospital with it, your odds of surviving are not that good. Versus you getting a vaccine, which increases your chances of living. Makes sense. But it always amazes me, and I try not to go down this rabbit hole because I've done this before, where I talk to individuals who are not vaccinated, and again they're just like, well, I just don't see the point because if I get because getting vaccinated means that I don't trust the shot the government gives me. Okay, so let's do an affirmation here, right? Because I always find it funny. I ask people, okay, so you don't trust the government's vaccines they're giving out for free, right? Right. Do you trust the water? I mean, you shower every day, but local governments run the municipal utilities. You trust that. You trust the gas you trust the gas that you put in your car every day. You put in your car every once in a while. You trust the mail that's delivered to you. You hopefully trust that near the end of your non-working days that your Social Security may or may not be there. Your 401k is there, and that's all government regulated. So with that being said, you'll trust everything else that you usually don't pay that much attention to. But when the government tells you need to get a shot to avoid getting a very nasty virus, you show pause. Okay, I've learned to say okay. I've learned to sit there and say, I can show you evidence. I can show you data. I can show you everything out there that these vaccines work, because vaccines have always had a history of working for the betterment, for the betterment. They never had a negative downturn. But like the journalist said at the end, yes, you want to affirm, you want to find common ground, you want to pivot toward evidence. But anybody that's done that and you still run those people that are just like, well, you know what? I understand that you have all these facts and whatnot, but they don't agree with the fact of what I found on the internet. Why? Misinformation is addictive. Misinformation is so addictive that a person will believe a flat out lie by some basement guy on YouTube than an accredited virologist who is speaking to them on television. Tell me I'm wrong. That's all I can sit there and say is tell me I'm wrong. Beyond that, guys, I did want to move into this story because, again, this goes into exactly what I said about restaurants, especially here in Nashville, where I've been telling folks, I said, look, getting back to cooking, especially at night, because this worker strike is really starting to hit home, especially to those that depend on fast food chains. You know, when you don't feel like cooking and whatnot, this is what happens when you're not paying the workers properly.
Virus and its economic impact are behind a summer of frustration. Companies are struggling to find workers, and there's a shortage of everything from furniture to menu items at Taco Bell.
The number of industries struggling to find workers right now is expanding, frustrating everyone from retail consumers to travelers who had hoped for more of a normal summer.
This is the summer that everybody needs to have a lot of patience. See very sort of uneven service levels because, you know, organizations are struggling to get the people they need and, you know, to get the quality of talent that they need.
With a record number of job openings, companies are going to new extremes to fill vacancies. One executive in waste management recently suggested using prisoners or work release programs to find workers. Parts of the service industry are also looking into the idea. Restaurants in Texas, Michigan, Delaware, and Ohio can now use a state-run program connecting them with people transitioning out of the criminal justice system. Meanwhile, at the airports, long lines due to a labor shortage at the TSA have contributed to a spike in violence. The head of the TSA telling Congress Tuesday that 85 TSA officers have now been assaulted since the pandemic began.
Just sadly had 2 assaults yesterday coming through one of our checkpoints. There has been some frustration over the mask mandate.
The worker shortage also having a ripple effect on product supply chains.
The Quesalupa's cheese stuffed shell is back, and we think you'll like it.
Taco Bell is warning customers that some menu items may not be available because of national ingredient shortages and delivery delays. And a lack of truckers is being blamed for a liquor shortage.
Our alcohol, our liquor, week to week, we don't know what we're going to be able to get.
Bars also desperate for workers. One brewery in New York printed help wanted signs on their beer cans.
And if you order new furniture for the summer, a shortage of foam is.
Now think about that, ladies and gentlemen. All that shortage of workers equals shortage of product equals consumer purchasing is down. And you know what'll fix all this? Raise the wage. Raise the minimum wage. And that's I was kind of disappointed that Biden didn't talk about that. He had a whole shot at his town hall to really talk about raise the minimum wage and really take another dig at it. Because I'm pretty sure by now it would get more public support. Because a lot of people, even at $15 an hour, it's nice, but it needs to be higher. It needs to be close to $20 to $21 an hour. And you will still say people, that's ridiculous. Why? Because it's more than what you're making right now, which again says a lot. What people don't understand is when you raise the minimum wage, you will basically bring back people. At the same time, those who are working, now you can go back and sit there and say, okay, well, the federal minimum wage has been raised, so therefore I should be given raises. And if you don't, then again, that just shows you how little the company values you. But I've been saying this. You want to solve this problem, raise the minimum wage to at least $20 an hour. And I can hear the best small, well, I can't afford $20 an hour. Well, that's the cost of business. Because that is the business. See, the business world works out when you make profit. The business world, the people in the business world will claim unfair when you realize you have to pay those very same people that's turning out your profit. But you have to pay them a living wage. Because if they don't, then they're going to be struggling, taking on additional jobs and side hustles, things of that nature, just trying to make ends meet until they find somebody who's going to pay them what they're owed. And I've been saying this for the longest time, guys. There's no such thing as corporate loyalty. You drop dead at the job you're working at, the job wanted poster will be put up before your obituary is. I have been saying it. Raise the minimum wage, and a lot of these problems will be solved on their own. It's just that simple. So the last story I want to get, guys, it kind of goes into critical race theory because it does explain a history about a certain wall in Detroit and actually explains the history behind redlining, which I thought was interesting, and I just want to share with you guys.
The wall is directly across the street from my house. I could stand in my front door or in my front living room window and I could see the wall. One question people always ask me is, do you want the wall to be torn down? No, I don't. The history of what went on, why it went on, and how we can change things, that history needs to be told. I've been here for 62 years. We moved out here in February of 1959.
That's me.
When we moved over here, the wall was there. We didn't know what it was. Our parents didn't tell us what it was. I don't even know if my mom and dad knew. It was kind of like the fence. It divided Burwood and Mendota. And the kids that lived on the Mendota side wanted to come to the park, so they would hop the wall. That's what the wall was to us. It was like a fence, you know, that's all.
I had a close friend that I often studied with in the library, but we had midterms coming up and my friend invited me over to his house, actually a couple of blocks from the Burwood Street, and we came across this massive wall which seemed to terminate nowhere, just went on. And he kind of smiled and said that the kids who come to the neighborhood, this is one of their initiation rituals. You climb the wall and walk it as far as you can. And I guess I got about a city block before I tripped, fell into the soft grass of a backyard, and I just looked up at him and said, this is really absurd. Why would they not have put a chain link fence up to separate neighborhoods rather than this brick wall? And he kind of changed his expression, looked down at me and said, it was to keep people like you away from people like me.
This is the Burwood Wall, part of Detroit's 8 Mile, Wyoming neighborhood. Built to separate black residents on one side and white residents on the other. A housing developer built this wall in 1941 in order to guarantee mortgage loans for white families in a new development to the west. Loans black families were denied at the time.
When the developer went to the local banks, they, of course, inquired of the FHA because they wanted their mortgage loans insured. The FHA said, you know, this new development is all well and good, but it borders an area that is considered hazardous. You would be building homes adjacent to a black community, and there's potential for racial strife. And so he went directly to the FHA and said, what if I construct a substantial 6-foot concrete wall, which would separate this hazardous area from my development? And the FHA bought it. When you see the Burwood Wall, you kind of think of a southern water fountain or a cafeteria counter. You think of an artifact that would be more associated with segregation in the South. You don't think of it in the North. But to see the construction of a segregation wall like this was an absolute slap in the face of black Detroiters, first and second generation, certainly.
My grandmother, Bernice Avery, was a remarkable woman. It was my grandmother who became the vessel, the communicator the person who led the community revolt against the inability to have equal treatment around housing. So the 6-foot concrete wall remained on the line of the alley at the rear of Burwood. Carver Progressive Club members had been slapped in the face before, and this, though humiliating, did not faze their determination. My family, my grandparents and my great-grandparents moved here many years ago, having migrated from the South. What they did find was that the struggle continued, and that while the restrictions in the South were very direct, the restrictions in the North may be a little more subtle, but they certainly existed. They were told that there were places where they could not go, could not live.
Bernice and other activists fought this injustice, writing letters to public officials and lobbying the government until they won access to federal loans and mortgages for the community in 1944. Because of their work, more than 1,500 Black residents bought and built homes in the neighborhood. Among those were Teresa and her family.
It wasn't so much that they were making a point around integration or whether or not they cared whether or not they had a white neighbor. It was fundamentally that they should have the choice to live where they wanted to live. Her view was that as a Black family, the right thing to do was to give them the opportunity to live in a home. That is just like a basic right.
And in 1948, a Supreme Court case ruled against racially restrictive housing covenants, like the ones that prevented Black families from buying houses west of the wall. But as Black residents began to move in on both sides of the wall, white residents fled to the nearby suburbs. In the decades since, what was once a vibrant Black community was hit hard. The city saw a complex mix of challenges: factory closures, racial tensions, job loss, bankruptcy. Over time, the Black middle class fled the city, and a housing crisis took its toll on 8 Mile, along with the rest of Detroit.
It's changed a lot. A lot of houses are vacant around here, in disrepair, just a lot of empty spaces, a lot of empty houses. When our family first moved out here, the majority of the people were homeowners. What I learned as being a homeowner, watching my parents and the people in this community, is that you take care of your space. I'm going to the park every day. That's what I do. I want it to remain clean. I want it to be nice. The kids always ask me if I own the park.
You got another car, Miss Teresa?
Yeah, I got one at the house. You wanna walk over there with me? Yeah. And I just tell the kids, no, it's not mine, it's our park. So you see me picking up trash. If you see trash on the ground, or if you have trash, just go throw it away. Y'all know what to do with that trash, don't you? Do I tell them about the wall? Yes, I do. Do they listen? No. Kids aren't really interested. These kids now are something different.
While other relics of segregation, like Confederate monuments in the South, have been toppled in recent years, many here say they don't want the wall to be torn down.
I think people feel differently about this wall than they do about other symbols because, for one thing, there's a beautiful mural on the wall that depicts something positive. It depicts happiness, togetherness, joy, peace, love, whereas other walls gave a sense of something dark and ugly. Even though the Burwood Wall has that same connotation, the mural on the wall changes your mind a little bit when you look at it.
In February, the National Park Service added the Burwood Wall to the National Register of Historic Places.
I suspect there are stories like this all over the country, and I think increasingly we have to extract their stories, we have to incorporate them into our history books. I think we have to teach kids, give them a sense of place, and you do that by letting them know what's down the block.
Last summer was more than just a reckoning, I think it was an awakening. And the wall, the Burwood Wall, is an example of how far we've come and maybe how far we still have to go.
My son has said to me quite a few times, "Ma, why don't you move?" I don't even see the sense in that. I love living here.
How you doing, baby? Hey, sweetie.
My level of commitment to this neighborhood, there is no way to measure it. I'm not going anywhere. There's nothing that can make me leave. I live and breathe this neighborhood. I do anything for it, anything. So.
And that just goes to show you guys that there is so much out there, and I point this out every chance I get. There are stories like this that should be told, that should be educated, because we should know exactly what these historical monuments actually mean, especially to America's history. And, you know, the whole point of redlining and home ownership and just how our economy affects us, not just Americans as a whole, but black people in general. And like I said before, I like actually learning about that. I'm a student of history. I love learning about learning about stories that you're not going to necessarily be told in school, but you have plenty of people out there. You have elders that'll sit there and gladly tell you history as long as you're willing to listen. And I thought that was pretty cool. But moving right along, guys, I did want to talk about this last story before we get to our feel good segment about the rent. Why is rent going up? Well, because housing developments that was terrible. Housing developments or housing development groups and hedge funds are buying up property like it's popcorn. And what does that mean for your occasional renter? Your price goes up.
Are rising well past their pre-pandemic levels in multiple U.S. cities. Realtor.com says the median rent last month is up 8% compared to the same time last year. There are also less homes on the rental market. Experts say that's leading to bidding wars. Rents are at a new high in 44 of the U.S.'s largest markets. CBS News Money Watch reporter Irina Ivanova joins me now for more. Irina, great to have you on. So what areas are seeing the biggest increase in rent, and what's the reason for this rise?
Thanks, Lana. So we're seeing some of the highest increases in smaller cities that are away from the coast, which is a real reversal of what we've seen in the past decade. If you look at data from Realtor.com, the 10 cities with the biggest increases are places like Riverside and San Bernardino in California, Memphis, Tennessee, Tampa, Phoenix, Sacramento, Cincinnati. These are not the coastal metros that have been seeing, very high rent increases before the pandemic. This is really driven by people from those big cities who fled during the pandemic, either for reasons related to COVID or for lifestyle reasons. A lot of those folks are deciding they don't want to move back to the Bay Area or to Los Angeles or to Boston. They want to stay in their smaller city, and that's causing rents to go way, way up.
And what impact is this having on long-term renters?
For a lot of people, it's really jarring, especially if you consider the huge income disparities we have in some parts of the country. I spoke with one woman in the Memphis metro area. So Memphis has had the second highest increase in rents over the past 10 years. Rents are up 23% there. This woman rents a place for $850, and she's seeing places around her, houses get bought up and get put on the market for rent for $1,500 a month. And that's far more than she feels she can afford to pay. The median job in that area pays something like $34,000. So she's really concerned that when her lease is up, early next year, that she'll have to move out.
And a decrease in housing inventory, I understand, has also pushed more potential home buyers into renting. Explain how that also interacts with these already complex dynamics.
That is absolutely part of the equation. So we have not been building enough housing over the past decade to keep up with the rate of population growth. Last year, we actually had a really high year of building, but there's this huge backlog of people, the millennial generation, many of whom are in their early 30s or are turning 30 this year, which is typically an age where you would stop renting, you would buy a home. A lot of these people now can't buy because we've also seen housing prices go through the roof. If they can't buy, they keep renting. So that adds an additional pressure on rent prices.
And you mentioned rent in some of the bigger cities remain below their pre-pandemic levels. Tell us what cities are being affected at these lower levels, and do you expect that is going to continue to last much longer as the nation continues to recover?
So that's right. The largest cities, so New York, Los Angeles, Boston, Washington, D.C., Chicago, San Francisco Bay Area, they are, on average, the rents there are a little bit lower than they were a year before. But again, historically, these have been some of the priciest markets in the country, so these rents are down slightly from very, very high levels. Real estate experts don't expect it to last very much longer. One realtor I spoke with in New York City said, you can still get something now for about what you would pay last year, but she expects the good deals to end in a few months. But it's really an open question, and a lot of it depends on whether the people who left these big cities will all come back or whether some of them will stay where they've been living, in some of these smaller areas.
All I can sit there and say is everything's connected. I've been saying this, everything's connected because everything's going up but your paycheck. But it's amazing. Rent, mortgage, food, gas, electric, utilities, luxuries, if you will. All of it's going up. But it's amazing to me that if you're like me and you want to be a future homeowner one day, because don't get me wrong, kind of love my apartment, but I really want a house. That being said, it's going to be more and more difficult because of the housing market, which leads to pricing, which leads to jobs, which leads to paychecks. I don't mean to sound like a Marvel movie right now, but it's all connected. And until we do certain things, I fear it's only going to get worse. And I might be staring at these four walls for a little bit longer. But with that being said, we're going to go and move on to our Feel Good segment, because usually how the Frack we got here, we usually cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom. Sometimes they're just kind of deflates you, but it's the middle of the week because tomorrow's Friday Eve, and we want to start, leave you on a good note, give you some humanity, restore your faith in humanity. And what else can we do that but with comedy? Because this right here, I'm not going to lie, has been interesting. Not really a video per se, but these are some social media memes. Let's be honest. If you're on social media, chances are you've seen these memes, but I just think these are kind of funny. Like, for example, kids will straight up interrupt adult conversations because they want to tell you the name of their favorite YouTuber's dog. Yep. Or this one right here. When you've had a long day with the kids and you can't wait to go to sleep, but your man has other ideas. We've all been there, fellas. William Wallace, but they can never take away our freedom. Toddlers, think again. Dang, that's kind of bad. Of course, this one, me scrubbing the toilet. Husband, what are you doing? Me, exactly. That's kind of interesting. 62% of parenting is improvisational theater. I'm not gonna touch that one in a heartbeat. When my husband tries to take credit for my parenting, I raise the dragon. Oh, that's funny. At some point in my recent years, my husband started adding an H sound in front of words that begin with W. Have you checked the weather? The minute he says Horshusher, I cannot be held responsible for my actions. I do wonder if he knows how lucky he is to be alive. Dang. Just because of an H, you just ready to take the person out the frame? I wake up at 6 a.m. and I do not do a thing that wasn't dictated by my children or my employer until 8 p.m. every day. Dang. I mean, it's funny, but dang, that's dark. Anyone ever have totally fake phone conversations just to avoid saying hello to someone, or is that just me? No, I just usually avoid them. Let's do one more. Just when all of your kids sleep through the night and you think you can finally get some rest, a teenager emerges who stays up all night. Shh. I'm not about to touch that with a 10-foot pole. But a lot of them are funny. I will give it that. But that's going to basically do it for our podcast this midweek, guys. So I do thank all of you for watching, for who shared and liked and commented. I know there was a little bit of a comment situation that I usually have up here, but it's not here, but that's okay. But before I do get out of here, I do got to do some shameless plugging. I do got to start my buddy Big VZA Dot. who actually did do his podcast, which I'm going to go be watching Love After Lockup because of that crazy dude in that show. But anyway, my buddy Big Busy A Dot, he can be found either on Westman on Facebook. Big Busy A Dot on socials has a couple of podcasts. His first one is Smoking Trailers on Sundays from 6:30 to 9 p.m., in which he goes over trailers from movies and video games that he finds interesting. He also has the RAF, which is like America's Funniest Home Videos. It's done by World Star. Definitely for the adult, not for kids. Every Tuesday from 6:30 to 9 p.m. And also for anything that he also may show, definitely check him out for updates. A the Von Westfood on Facebook and Big VZA Dot on all socials. Now, as you can see from here, the link at the bottom, you copy and paste that into your browser, will take you to my link tree for all of my YouTube, for all of my Facebook and YouTube groups, for all of my podcasts, How the Frack We Got Here, Get Bit, and of course the Unfluenced Podcast. Definitely like, share, and subscribe, guys, and let me know what you think. If you like what I did, please let me know. If you didn't like what I did, please let me know. We're just trying to build this to where we can all enjoy it, because I have been told by others they like listening to this podcast as far as getting the news, because let's be honest, the news can sometimes be monotone and you just want to cut through the bloatware, if you will, to really just get an idea of what's going on in today's world, especially in the U.S., which is what we try to do. Beyond that, guys, a couple things I'll say before I get out of here. COVID-19 is real. If you're vaccinated, great. If you're not vaccinated, I hope your mind changes soon. But either way, if you want to wear a mask out in public, there's definitely nothing wrong with that. You should always feel safe and definitely can protect yourself at all times. Aside from that, guys, last thing I'll say about How the Frack We Got Here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to change minds or opinions. We're just simply trying to do what news stations will try to do, which is basically give you all the facts and allow you to make up your own mind for yourself. We do a lot better as a society once we're informed. When we're uninformed, we do stupid things like we like electing Trump. But when we're informed, we can be progressive, we can move forward, we can actually do things like elect our first Madam Vice President who's black. Still hope for Michelle Obama in 2024. Aside from that, guys, have a wonderful midweek. Thank you all for watching. If you're watching this on the playback, please comment if it's live. At the same time, guys, hope to see you. Actually, it won't be a Get Bit this Friday. We're actually moving it to Sunday. But hopefully we'll see you guys on the weekend edition of How the Frack We Got Here and Off Limits this Saturday, guys. Take care of each other, and we'll get through this. Peace.